So the college basketball season is officially wrapped up. UCONN continues its reign over the country. However, in the modern day of college basketball, the madness really doesn't end in March. It's actually just getting started. Because this year, not long after we heard the final horn blow in the tournament, coaches started moving around for other jobs, players started jumping in the transfer portal, and we witnessed a huge shift in power across the country. And it's caused one of the biggest hires in college basketball that no one is talking about. And I'm not talking about John Calipari going to Arkansas or even Mark Pope taking the job at Kentucky, but rather BYU's new head coach, Kevin Young. And to fully understand the significance of this hire, we have to go back a little bit.
Way off the mark, kind of like most of his night from the outside. Horn sounds, here we go. Tonight, it's about BYU. It's about Mark Pope's team. First time in 9 years ranked. They have waited a long time for this.
So to start out, Mark Pope came to BYU after a successful stint just 10 miles north at Utah Valley University. He was hired back in 2019 and quickly won over the BYU fan base with a 24-8 record and a signature win over number 2 Gonzaga. And he led a very skilled offense that was destined for its first tournament bid since 2015. But sadly, due to COVID, we never really got to see what that team was capable of. And after a decent 4-year stretch, by BYU standards at least, Mark Pope was set to lead the Cougars to their first year in the Big 12. Expectations were low. They were picked to finish second to last in the preseason poll, but they kind of stunned the league, finishing in 5th place and securing a 6th seed in the Big Dance. Again, Mark Pope was able to put together one of the best offenses in the country by raining as many threes as possible. The team was led by guys like point guard Dallin Hall, Ali Khalifa, one of the best passing big men in the country. Richie Saunders was kind of that energy guy off the bench who's going to do the dirty work, knock down the big shots, and play tough defense. And they had their best player coming off the bench in Jackson Robinson, who secured the 6th Man of the Year in the Big 12. A super fun team to watch that unfortunately couldn't get it done against Duquesne in the first round of the tournament, and winning in the tournament is something Mark Pope hasn't been able to do his whole career. However, even with the disappointing finish to the season, just about all the major contributors were back for next year. The only real question they had was Jackson Robinson, who was going to weigh his options with coming back to college or testing the NBA waters.
We want to be back here next year. I'm already thinking about it, but yeah, we could make that happen right now.
And I even forgot to mention Colin Chandler, BYU's highest rated high school recruit in school history. He was coming off his 2-year LDS mission and was set to join the team this summer. I mean, hopes were high that with the new prestige in the Big 12 and the amount of returning production, Mark Pope and this BYU Cougar team was really just getting started. However, elsewhere in the college basketball universe, things weren't looking so optimistic.
This will be a bitter pill. This one. 5.5-hour drive from Lexington, and a number of fans have made the trip. They may be heading home early. Oakland with a March memory of a lifetime.
Greatest upset in this program's history. How'd you do it?
This guy right here, just go shoot it, baby. You're the best. And he's the best, and he proved it to the world tonight.
So Kentucky was coming off yet another embarrassing first-round loss, this time to Jack Golke and the Oakland Grizzlies. And this really capped off a 4-year stretch of bad performances in March Madness that really is not acceptable at a program like Kentucky. And even though it was confirmed for a while that John Calipari was coming back for another season, rumblings behind the scenes were starting to grow louder and louder that change might be needed.
It just can't go on like this. The situation is untenable. I don't think it can continue like this. It has reached the point that I think there probably needs to be a separation.
And then this dropped.
Ellen and I have spent a lot of time thinking about our time here at Kentucky. We've come to realize that this program probably needs to hear another voice. We think it's time for us to step away.
Ultimately, John Calipari agreed with those rumblings and was off to Fayetteville. And it obviously was an end of an era, but this is Kentucky we're talking about. I mean, they have their pick of any coach they want in college and maybe even some professional options. There was some immediate speculation about maybe Billy Donovan, but more realistically, I think the fan base was expecting someone at the top ranks within college basketball. Guys like Bruce Pearl, Scott Drew, Nate Oates, or maybe even Dan Hurley. But one by one, news kept breaking of coaches refusing the job and electing to stay and keep building where they were.
The search for a new UK coach continues. Baylor head coach Scott Drew has passed on the offer to come to Kentucky.
Tonight, Oates issued a statement via social media that put any notions of him talking to Kentucky to rest.
Would you have an interest if they call? And my answer to that was no. I'm the head coach at the best program in the country. Why would I leave the best program in the country?
But there was one coach that was more than willing to take the job.
Hello, University of Kentucky. Man, I wish I could be there with you guys tonight. It's impossible for me to describe how much I love this university, my teammates, and you fans. But I'm gonna try. C-A-T-S! Cats! 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 I love you guys.
Breaking news, we've been reporting on it, but now it is official. Mark Pope is the new men's basketball coach at Kentucky.
This is Mitch Barnhart, and I'd like to talk to you about and I was like, yes, I'm coming. And then he said, well, we're not sure we want you yet. Let's have a conversation. And that's not exactly how it happened in real time, but that's how it happened in my heart for sure.
So Mark Pope was gone, and suddenly optimism back in Provo was fading fast. They were without their head coach and without a whole lot of home run options, because BYU is really a unique situation. As many know, it's a private religious institution with a strict honor code both for coaches and players. Head coaches specifically have to be active members of the LDS Church. So that alone cuts the talent pool for what BYU can pick from down to a fraction of what it could be. But really, that's only the beginning. Once they actually find their guy, they have to go through a long and really drawn out vetting process, including several interviews with church presidents and actual general authority leaders of the church. This was a process that took weeks when they were hiring Mark Pope. But BYU didn't have weeks. Once news broke that Mark Pope was leaving, the sky was falling in Provo. Big man Ali Khalifa enters the portal. Point guard Dallin Hall enters the portal. Richie Saunders enters the portal. Jackson Robinson makes it clear that his first priority is the NBA. And then the real bomb dropped, and I think one that hurt the BYU fan base the most. Colin Chandler, their highest recruit in the history of the school, announced his decommitment from BYU. And this isn't a situation unique to BYU. When coaches leave, players leave all the time. But with how fast things move in the sport now with the transfer portal and how long and drawn out the traditional process was of finding a new head coach, things weren't looking good. Most of the candidates that were talked about were assistant coaches at other programs. There was even some talk of a local high school coach taking the job. But the top of the conceivable list for BYU was Utah assistant coach Chris Burgess, a highly respected assistant who many thought was due for his shot to be head coach somewhere. And while that would have been a great hire for BYU, behind the scenes, they had some other ideas in mind. So news broke that BYU administrators were taking a trip to Phoenix, Arizona. And that could really only mean one thing. They wanted to talk to a man by the name of Kevin Young. Young was the Suns' lead assistant and the highest paid assistant in the NBA. He was with the team on their run to the NBA Finals a few years ago, and his name was being thrown around for head coaching jobs in Brooklyn and Charlotte, not Provo. But BYU does uniquely have some deep connections to the NBA with guys like Ryan Smith, the owner of the Utah Jazz, and guys like Danny Ainge, former owner of the Boston Celtics. And if they made this happen, it would show that they're not satisfied with just being a member of the Big 12, but they wanted to compete and win at the highest level in college basketball.
Phoenix Suns associate head coach Kevin Young is finalizing a long-term deal. We're hearing maybe as many as 7 years from Matt Norlander.
This is 30 mil, 7 years potentially by BYU source.
Long-term deal to become the next coach at Brigham Young University. An aggressive push to hire the NBA's highest paid assistant lands BYU its top target, end quote.
This hire is a statement to the league that BYU is not messing around. So sure, BYU had their guy, but the fires were still there waiting to be put out. First order of business for Kevin Young was getting a coaching staff and getting the team back together, all while coaching Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Sure, it's not an easy task, but it's a lot easier with a private jet, and over the next few days, BYU fans were waiting for any kind of information about the team. Although the optimism that anyone was coming back from last year was growing pretty doubtful. Colin Chandler made it official that he was following Mark Pope to Kentucky. Then a picture surfaced of Mark Pope meeting Richie Saunders and his wife at an airport in Lexington. He was crystal balled on 247 Sports to be going to Kentucky. Even Dallin Hall was gone. It was rumored that he was getting courted heavily by Creighton. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, on a Thursday night, this post surfaced. And the next day, Dallin Hall followed suit. On top of that, BYU was able to flip a 4-star local recruit, Brady Kozlowski, from USC back to Provo. And to this day, there are still pieces left to be filled on this roster for BYU, but all of a sudden it looked like they were retooling and reloading. And on top of all of this, Kevin Young was able to hire Chris Burgess as one of his assistants. This was a guy that was originally thought to be a frontrunner for the head coaching job. The staff is starting to look pretty stacked and poised to live up to the top goal that Kevin Young has as head coach at BYU.
To take it to the next level is make this place the best place in college basketball to prepare young men to play in the NBA. And I think with my background, I think we're going to be able to get that done. And I really look forward to doing that.
And even though Kevin Young hasn't coached a single game at BYU and is really unproven on the college level, what he's managed to do with bringing back all these players, signing new recruits and transfers, all while coaching in the NBA playoffs, cannot be overstated. A lot is yet to play out before we tip things off in November, but one thing is for sure, watch out for Kevin Young and the Cougars in Provo. See you guys in the next video. Peace.